Chapter 7. Divorce. Unlike what Nalan Yanran expected. After saying the alluring condition, the young man in front of her started trembling. He slowly raised his head and his delicate and young face was contorted into a fearsome, savage face. Even though Xiao Yan had endured countless taunts over the past 3 years, even he had a limit. Nalan Yanran's actions had roughly stepped on the final shred of dignity hidden deep within Xiao Yan's heart. Seeing the vicious face of the young man, Yanran sprang backwards. The young man by her sides took the chance to pull out his sword and coldly stared at Xiao Yan. I want to kill you. Even though his teeth were clattering, Xiao Yan's words had an unmistakable killing intent to them. His hands were curled into fists and within his black pupils, furious flames burned. Yaner, you're being rude. At the top of the hall, Xiao San was shocked by the reaction of Xiao Yan, and hurriedly quieted Xiao Yan. The current Xiao clan wouldn't dare be on the wrong side of faction of Misty Clouds. Even though his fists tightened even further, Xiao Yan lowered his head. Moments later, he lightly lifts up his head. The difference with it, the vicious face that he had displayed earlier had been completely replaced by a calm and impassive face. In the past 3 years, Xiao Yan had endured countless discrimination and taunts. As a result, Xiao Yan was now more mature than before. Perhaps his greatest gain from the past 3 years was that he had learned to keep his emotions under control. Looking at the completely different young man, Ji and Nalan Yanran suddenly felt a chill. This kid, if he stays useless then it isn't a big deal. But if he gains strength, then he will definitely become a dangerous force to be reckoned with, Ji solemnly thought. Xiao Yan, even though I don't know why my actions have infuriated you thus far, but you should still release the marriage. Slowly letting out a breath, Nalan Yanran pushed her fear and stiffened her face. Remember, my visit to Xiao clan was permitted by my teacher, the faction leader of faction of Misty Clouds. Pursing her lips, Nalan Yanran said, with a slight hint of helplessness, you can understand that my visit today is partly coercion. But you should understand that the reality is harsh and nothing is fair. Even though it shouldn't mean much, you should understand the difference between us. We don't have any hope of being together. Hearing the absolute statements of the girl, Xiao Yan's mouth curved into a sneer. Lady Nalan, you should understand. In Doki mainland, a woman going back on her marriage would be embarrassed the opposite party in front of everyone. I don't really care about being embarrassed. But my father, he's the clan leader. If we accept your request today, then how do you expect him to rule over Xiao clan? How will Xiao clan keep a foothold in Wu Tan City? Looking at the furious young man, Nalan Yanran's brows furrowed. She peeked at Xiao Zhan at the end of the hall. He appeared as if he had just aged by a lot. Seeing that, she felt slightly sorry for her actions and bit her lips. After musing for a moment, her eyes lit up. She whispers, today's request. It's a little reckless on my part. So, today, I will temporarily take back my request to release my marriage. But, you must promise me something. What promise? I can delay today's request for 3 years. 3 years from now, you will come to faction of Misty Clouds and challenge me. If I win, then I will release the marriage in front of everyone, and at that time, you would have performed your clan's rites of adulthood, so even if you lose, you won't be affecting your father Xiao San or Xiao clan. Do you accept? When I lose, then it won't affect the name of my father, but maybe for my entire life. I'll bear the shame of losing. This woman is too cruel. Xiao Yan felt helpless. He was angry, but he couldn't find a source to vent it. Lady Nalan, it's not like you don't know the condition of Yaner. How do you expect him to challenge you? Insulting him like this? Is it fun for you? Xiao Zhan smacked the table and angrily stood up. Xiao Zhan Shushu. When releasing a marriage, there must someone who bears the responsibilities of it. If not for you, I would be releasing the marriage today. Afterwards, I will announce it to the public. After being blocked several times, Nalan Yanran was also getting angry and coldly shouted at Xiao Yan. Since you don't want to hurt the name of Xiao Zhan Shushu, then accept the challenge. 3 years or now. Will you choose the former or the later? Nalan Yanran. You don't need to act all high and mighty. The reason behind you releasing this marriage is because you don't think that I, Xiao Yan, a near cripple, match you, a genius. Forgive me for putting things plainly. Besides your beauty, I don't care about anything else of yours. The faction of Misty Clouds is very strong. I'll admit that. But I am young. I have lots of time. When I was 12, I was a docher. But you, Nalan Yanram, when you were 12, how many Duan Qi did you have? You're right. I might be crippled right now. But since I created miracles 3 years ago, why do you think that I can't repeat such miracles in the future? Why do you think that I can't become the genius that I once was? Facing the aggressive stance, Xiao Yan finally erupted like a volcano. His face became completely serious and his words shocked everyone in the main hall. Who would have thought that the quiet young man possessed such a sharp tongue? Nalan's mouth twitched. Even though she was extremely pissed at Xiao Yan, she couldn't find words to argue against his statements. Xiao Yan's words were truth. Even though he was crippled now, he was a docher back when he was 12 years old. But Nalan Yanran was only 8 Duan Qi at that time. Lady Nalan, because of grandfather Nalan, I'll give you some advice. 30 years east, 30 years west. Don't you dare bully me because I'm poor now. Xiao Yan's tough words made Nalan stiffen. Yes. What a great saying. Don't you dare bully me because I'm poor now. My son can't possibly be ordinary. At the end of the hall, Xiao Zhan's eyes were lit with vigor and his heavy palms slammed against the table, causing tea to spatter everywhere. Clenching her teeth and staring at the sneering young man in front of her, Nalan became so angry that her head began to feel dizzy. Nalan Yanran had been spoiled since birth and had never been humiliated by someone the same age as her. Her childish voice climbed another pitch. What is your basis for humiliating me? Even if your talent before was unsurpassed by anyone. You're a cripple now. Okay. Nalan Yanram, will wait for the day that you surpass me. Today's release. I won't mention it anymore. But 3 years from now, I will wait for you at Faction of Misty Clouds. If you have the guts, then show me how you've changed your situation. If you defeat me then I, Nalan Yanram, will be your slave for the rest of my life. Of course. If you're still crippled 3 years later, then you better prepare the contract to release our marriage. Looking at the ashen face of the girl, Xiao Yan ridicules. It won't take 3 years. I wouldn't want you even if you were begging me to become my wife. After saying that, Xiao Yan ignored the frozen face of Yanran and turned around, quickly walking forward to a table. He took out a paper and started to write. The ink slowly dropped onto the paper. And finally, his pen stopped moving. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's right hand reached for a short sword on the desk and pointed the sharp blade at his left hand. As soon as ready the sword, he firmly drew blood from his left hand. His bloodied hand pressed down on the white paper, leaving a glaring red mark. Lightly picking up the contract, Xiao Yan laughed. A laugh of victory. When he walked past Yanran, he smashed the contract on the table. Don't you dare think that I, Xiao Yan, think highly of some genius wife. This contract isn't a contract to release the marriage, but rather, I am divorcing you from the Xiao clan. From now on, you, Nalan Yanram, have no relations with the Xiao clan. You dare divorce me. Looking at the bloody contract on the table, Nalan Yanran's eyes opened wide in disbelief. With her beauty, talent and background, to have been divorced by a small clan's cripple. This sudden turn of events made her think that she was in a dream. Coldly looking at Nalan Yanran's dumbfounded expression, Xiao Yan turned around and kneels in front of Xiao Zhan. He gave a heavy kowtow, biting his lips, and didn't say anything. Even though Xiao Yan actually divorced Nalan Yanran, when the events spread out, others might not think that it's the truth. They, who don't know what happened, would think that Nalan Yanran used her tyrannical background for force Xiao clan to release the marriage. After all, with Yanran's beauty, talent and background, a cripple from Xiao clan would never be able to match her. No one would think that Xiao Yan had the boldness to divorce a future faction leader of the faction of Misty Clouds. Because of that, being Xiao Yan's father, Xiao Zhan would probably have to endure endless ridicule. Looking at the kneeling Xiao Yan and understanding the guilty feelings that his son was having, Xiao Zhan helplessly smiled. I believe that my son won't stay crippled forever. Gossip won't stand a chance when the hard facts come out in the future. Father, 3 years from now, I will go to faction of Misty Clouds and redeem today's shame. With slightly wet eyes, Xiao Yan did another heavy kowtow and stood up. Without hesitating, Xiao Yan walked towards the door of the main hall. When he passed Nalan Yanran, Xiao Yan pauses a moment and spits out cold words from his young mouth. 3 years from now, I will find you. The shadow of the young man, under the shining sun, extended extremely far. Looking at it, it seemed very lonely. Nalan Yanran's small mouth opened but no sound came out. She stared at the disappearing back of Xiao Yo, and the contract in her hand felt as heavy as a mountain. Since your goal has been accomplished, please leave now. Looking at the receding young man, even though Xiao Zhan's face was impassive, the hands inside of his sleeve curled into fists so tight that the fingers became a pale white. Xiao Shushu, I apologize for today's event. If you have time in the future, make sure to come visit the Nalan clan. Lightly bowing to the impassive Xiao Zhan, Nalan also didn't want to stay. She quickly stood up and went towards the door of the main hall. Behind her, Ji Yi and the handsome young man quickly followed her. Take the key gathering powder. Waving his hand, Xiao Zhan threw the jade box on the table at them. Ji Yi quickly caught the falling box and bitterly smiled while placing the box within his ring. Lady Nalan, hopefully you won't regret your actions today. And also, don't assume that with faction of Misty Clouds behind you, you can do anything you want. There were a lot of people stronger than Young. When Nalan Yanran was about to exit the door, a clear girl's cold voice sounded within the hall. The steps of the three paused and they glanced towards the corner where the voice came from. Finding a purple-dressed girl slowly flipping a book, the sunlight shined through the window next to her and perfectly wrapped around the girl. From afar, she looked like a heavenly purple lotus blooming, clean and graceful, as if she was from the heavens, as if she felt the glances from the three. The girl picked her head up from the old book, and within the autumn-like eyes of hers, a thin line of golden flame peeked out. Looking at the thin flame within the girl's eyes, Ji immediately stiffened and a fearful expression crossed his wizened face. His shriveled hands immediately grabbed the confused Nalan Yanran and a young man, and he fled from the main hall as if he was fearing for his life. Looking at the actions of Ji, except for a few people, the others all had expressions of confusion.